It's not new to us that essential fatty acids can help kids with ADD and ADHD, attention deficit disorder and attention hyperactivity disorder, by using certain omega-3 and 6 essential fatty acids. Now, we've known this in nutritional medicine for more than 15 years. And at last, an article was published in the January 2013 issue of the journal Pediatrics, acknowledging that essential fatty acids can help these kids. However, their recommendation was only to resort to this if the medications like Ritalin and Concerta and Adderall don't work. This is just crazy. These authors only suggest adopting a healthy diet high in essential fatty acids as a last resort.
It doesn't make much sense, does it? We should look at the story of how this all unfolded. How do we know that essential fatty acids are important in people who have ADD and ADHD? Well, there was a couple of nurses back in the mid-'80s who did some studies on kids who had ADD, Vicki, and what they found is that these kids had concentrated urine even though they were drinking a lot of water, and they couldn't figure out what that meant. And as they did their studies, they realized that the essential fatty acids are what are important in waterproofing the skin. So they knew from that, Vicki, that they had an issue with essential fatty acid metabolism.
Because they also had dry skin.
Exactly. And if you waterproof the skin with essential fatty acids and you don't have those present, then you're going to have a transepidermal or a skin loss of water. And that leads to concentrated urine.
Well, don't they also have other symptoms? Like
a lot of other symptoms. Well, that's what led them to figure out that there were essential fatty acids there. Then they took it further and found that the essential fatty acid defects that these kids had were defects that led to night blindness, to dyslexia, which means you can't get your numbers right, can't read right, and dyspraxia, which means your coordination's not so good and you can't catch a ball.
And this is really good information to get out to people because I think that ADD and ADHD are overdiagnosed.
Oh, for sure.
When kids are a problem in their classroom, they just kind of seem to label them with ADD, and they want to drug them so they can control them.
Exactly. So if we use these products, these essential fatty acids, it turns out that there's a defect in how our bodies process it if we have ADD and ADHD. When you take in the essential fatty acids, linolenic acid, which is the omega-6 side, and alpha-linolenic acid on the omega-3 side, that's a good start. And unfortunately, most of our population doesn't take much of that in because we just have deficiencies of that in our diet. But beyond that, there's a defect in being able to process these essential fatty acids into what are called their downchain metabolites, which include things like DHA and EPA and arachidonic acid and gammalinolenic acid, all essential things for kids who have ADD and ADHD.
Well, I know that there is a product out there, and we don't sell it or anything.
No, we have no financial interest in it.
But it's called Efalex, E-F-A-L-E-X, and this contains all these important essential fatty acids. But why is this so controversial?
Well, we think in medicine of how we're going to try and do things using drugs. But drugs aren't the answer. I mean, drugs can be used and they can be misused as well. And in this situation, they're definitely being misused. But that's a way we think as doctors. If we think as people who are trying to solve a problem, we want to try and find the cause for things, not suppress the symptoms with drugs.
Well, the other thing, too, besides the essential fatty acids, is eating a healthy diet.
Oh, for sure.
And there are certain foods that are recommended to avoid and other foods that we should, include in these people's diets.
Right. This has all been studied, and we know from recent literature that those kids that are eating a healthy diet that doesn't have the fast foods and the saturated fats that are like trans fats and
the soft drinks and potato chips.
Yeah, all those things. They don't really get, the ones that don't eat that diet don't get a problem with ADD or ADHD that often. So nutrition has a lot to do with this.
Well, they also, let's talk about what they do recommend, like the fish and the vegetables and the whole grains and fruits. And
Well, the fish is where we get those essential fatty acids in part. The problem is our diets. Our diets are a real problem because they have a lot of omega-6s, which we absolutely must have, but they're so processed that they're ruined. And then they become toxic. And so we have an epidemic of plenty of omega-6s getting into us, but not in a form that's healthy because they've been toxified by their processing.
And you know what's really interesting is that eating a healthy diet for ADHD is considered alternative treatment.
That's a joke. So when we're looking at the business of medicine, you can understand why there would be people who have an interest in the pharmaceutical approach to treating these kids with drugs. And that's what's happened. And our doctors, unfortunately, are brainwashed because of their training is really connected to the pharmaceutical companies in major ways in medical centers. Until we get away from the finances being the most important part of how medicine is practiced and get into lifestyle medicine, we're going to see diseases like this mistreated with drugs that we don't need, rather than looking at lifestyle and a diet that's healthy that can solve this in an awful lot of kids who have ADD and ADHD.